Welcome to PDFRun. In this video, we'll guide you on how to fill out Form 1120S. Form 1120S, U.S. Income Tax Return for an S Corporation, is an Internal Revenue Service (IRS) form used to report the income, gains, losses, deductions, credits, and other relevant financial information of a domestic corporation or an S corporation. You may get a copy of Form 1120S at the official IRS website. You can also get a ready-to-use, editable, and fillable version here at pdfrun.com. Moving forward, to begin filling out this document, click on the Fill Online button. This will redirect you to PDFRun's online editor. Before starting, please take note that a corporation must file Form 1120S IRS if it elected to be an S corporation by filing Form 2553, and the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, accepted the election. Calendar or tax year. Enter the beginning and end of the calendar or tax year that this form is being filed for. Name. Enter the name of the corporation. Number, street, and room or suite number. Enter the number, street, and room or suite number of the corporation. If the corporation has a P.O. box and the post office does not deliver mail to the street address of the corporation, enter the P.O. box number instead. City or town, state or province, country, and zip or foreign postal code. Enter the corporation's city or town, state or province, country, and zip or foreign postal code. Line A. Enter the effective date of the corporation's election as an S corporation. Line B. Enter the corporation's business activity code number. Line C. Check the box provided if Schedule M3 is attached. Line D. Enter your employer identification number, EIN. Line E. Enter the date that the corporation was registered. Line F. Enter the total assets of the corporation. Line G. Check yes if the corporation is electing to be an S corporation at the beginning of this tax year. Otherwise, check no. Line H. Check only one of the following that best applies to the purpose of this form. Final return. Name change. Address change. Amended return. S election termination. Line I. Enter the number of shareholders that were shareholders during any part of the tax year the form is being filed for. Line J. Check the appropriate box that applies best to the corporation. You may choose between aggregated activities for Section 465 at-risk purposes, grouped activities for Section 469 passive activity purposes. Income. Make sure to only include trade or business income and expenses on lines 1A through 21. Line 1A. Enter the gross receipts and sales. Line 1B. Enter the returns and allowances. Line 1C. Subtract line 1B from line 1A and enter the difference. Line 2. Enter the cost of the goods sold. Line 3. Subtract line 2 from line 1C and enter the difference. Line 4. Enter the amount of net gain as indicated on Form 4797, line 17. Attach Form 4797 to this form. Line 5. Enter any other income and attach the relevant statement or statements. Line 6. Add lines 3, 4, and 5 and enter the sum. Deductions. Line 7. Enter the amount of compensation given to officers. Attach Form 1125E to this form. Line 8. Enter the salaries and wages paid, less any employment credits. Line 9. Enter the cost of repairs and maintenance. Line 10. Enter the costs incurred as a result of bad debts. Line 11. Enter the cost of rent. Line 12. Enter the total cost of taxes and licenses. Line 13. Enter the amount of interest incurred in the activities of the business. Line 14. Enter any depreciation not claimed on Form 1125A or elsewhere on the return. Attach Form 4562 to this form. Line 15. Enter the cost of depletion. Do not deduct oil and gas depletion. Line 16. Enter the cost of advertising. Line 17. Enter the costs of any pension, profit sharing, and other similar plans. Line 18. Enter the cost of employee benefit programs. Line 19. Enter the total of any other deductions not listed above. Attach the relevant statement to this form. Line 20. Add lines 7 through 19 and enter the sum. Line 21. Subtract line 20 from line 6 and enter the difference. Tax and payments. Line 22A. Enter the excess net passive income or LIFO recapture tax. Line 22B. Enter the amount of tax as calculated on Schedule D. Line 22C. Add lines 22A and 22B and enter the sum. Line 23A. Enter the estimated tax payments made in 2021, and the amount of 2020 overpayment credited to 2021. Line 23B. Enter the amount of tax deposited with Form 7004. Line 23C. Enter the amount of credit for federal tax paid on fuels. Attach Form 4136 to this form. Line 23D. Add lines 23A, 23B, and 23C and enter the sum. Line 24. Enter the estimated tax penalty. Then check the box if Form 2220 is attached to this form. Line 25. If line 23D is smaller than the total of lines 22C and 24, enter the difference as the amount owed. Line 26. If line 23D is larger than the total of lines 22C and 24, enter the difference as the amount overpaid. Line 27. Enter the amounts from line 26 that are credited to 2022 estimated tax and refunded in the spaces provided. Signature. Have the representative of the corporation that this form is being filed for sign in the space provided and enter the date the form was signed. Title. Enter the title of the representative that signed this form. Permission to discuss form with preparer. Check yes if you wish to allow the IRS to discuss this form with the preparer shown below. Otherwise, check no. Paid preparer use only. Preparer's name. Enter the name of the preparer. Preparer signature. Have the preparer sign the form in the space provided. Date. Enter the date that the preparer signed the form. Self-employed. Check the box provided if the preparer is self-employed. Preparer tax identification number. Enter the preparer's preparer tax identification number, PTIN. Firm name. Enter the name of the firm that the preparer works for, if applicable. Firm EIN. Enter the firm's EIN, if applicable. Firm address. Enter the firm's number, street, city or town, county or state, country, and zip code, if applicable. Phone number. Enter the preparer's primary phone number. Schedule B. Other information. Line 1. Check the box that corresponds to the accounting method being used. You may choose between cash, accrual, other. Specify the method in the space provided. Line 2. Enter the appropriate codes corresponding to business activity 2A and product or service 2B in the spaces provided. Line 3. If at any time of the year, a shareholder of the corporation was a disregarded entity, a trust, an estate, or a nominee or similar person, check yes, and attach Schedule B1. Otherwise, check no. Line 4A. If the corporation directly owned 20% or more, or own, directly or indirectly, 50% or more of the total stock issued and outstanding of any foreign or domestic corporation at the end of the tax year, check yes, and enter the following information in columns 1 through 5 below. Name of corporation, EIN, if any, country of incorporation, percentage of stock owned. If percentage in, IV, is 100%, enter the date. If applicable, a qualified subchapter S subsidiary election was made. Otherwise, check no. Line 4B. If the corporation directly owned an interest of 20% or more, or own, directly or indirectly, an interest of 50% or more in the profit, loss, or capital in any foreign or domestic partnership, including an entity treated as a partnership, or in the beneficial interest of a trust at the end of the tax year, check yes, and enter the following information in columns 1 through 5 below. Name of entity, EIN, if any, type of entity, country of organization, maximum percentage owned in profit, loss or capital. Otherwise, check, no. Line 5A. If the corporation had any outstanding shares of restricted stock at the end of the tax year, check, yes, and enter the following information in lines 5A1 and 5A2 below. Total shares of restricted stock. Total shares of non-restricted stock. Otherwise, check, no. Line 5B. If the corporation had any outstanding stock options, warrants, or similar instruments at the end of the tax year, check, yes, and enter the following information in lines 5B1 and 5B2 below. Total shares of stock outstanding at the end of the tax year. Total shares of stock outstanding if all instruments were executed. Line 6. Check, yes, if the corporation has filed or must file Form 8918 to provide information on any reportable transaction. Otherwise, check, no. Line 7. If the corporation has issued publicly offered debt instruments with original issue discount, check the box provided. If the box was checked, the corporation may need to file Form 8281. Line 8. If the corporation A was a C corporation before it elected to be an S corporation, or the corporation acquired an asset with a basis determined by reference to the basis of the asset, or the basis of any other property, in the hands of a C corporation, and B has net unrealized built-in gain in excess of the net recognized built-in gain from prior years, enter the net unrealized built-in gain reduced by the net recognized built-in gain from prior years. Line 9. If the corporation has an election under Section 163J for any real property trade or business or any farming business in effect during the tax year, check, yes. Otherwise, check, no. Line 10. If the corporation satisfies one or more of the following, check, yes. The corporation owns a pass-through entity with current, or prior year carryover, excess business interest expense. The corporation's aggregate average annual gross receipts, determined under Section 448C for the 3 tax years preceding the current tax year, are more than $26 million, and the corporation has business interest expenses. The corporation is a tax shelter and the corporation has business interest expenses. Otherwise, check, no. Line 11. If the corporation satisfies both of the conditions below, check, yes. Corporation's total receipts for the tax year were less than $250,000. Corporation's total assets at the end of the tax year were less than $250,000. If yes was checked, the corporation is not required to complete Schedules L and M1. Otherwise, check, no. Line 12. If the corporation had any non-shareholder debt that was cancelled, forgiven, or had the terms modified so as to reduce the principal amount of debt, check, yes, and enter the amount of principal reduction. Otherwise, check, no. Line 13. If a qualified subchapter S subsidiary election was terminated or revoked during the tax year, check, yes. Otherwise, check, no. Line 14A. If the corporation made any payments in 2021, that would require it to file Form 1099, check, yes. Otherwise, check, no. Line 14B. If yes was checked in line 14A, check, yes. If the corporation has filed or will file Form 1099. Otherwise, check, no. Line 15. If the corporation is attaching Form 8996 to certify as a qualified opportunity fund, check, yes, and enter the amount from Form 8996, line 15. Otherwise, check, no. Schedule K. Shareholders pro rata share items. Income, loss. Line 1. Enter the amount of ordinary business income or loss. Line 2. Enter the amount of net rental estate income or loss. Attach Form 8825 to this form. Line 3A. Enter the amount of other gross income or loss. Line 3B. Enter the amount of expenses from other rental activities and attach any relevant statements. Line 3C. Subtract line 3B from line 3A. Line 4. Enter the amount of income earned from interest. Line 5A. Enter the amount of ordinary dividends. Line 5B, enter the amount of qualified dividends. Line 6, enter the amount earned from royalties. Line 7, enter the net short-term capital gain or loss, and attach Schedule D to this form. Line 8A, enter the net long-term capital gain or loss. Line 8B, enter the amount of gain or loss from collectibles. Line 8C, enter the unrecaptured Section 1.2.5.0 gain and attach the relevant statements. Line 9, enter the net Section 1.2.3.1 gain or loss and attach Form 4797. Line 10, enter any other income or loss not declared above. Deductions. Line 11, enter the amount of Section 179 deduction. Line 12A, enter the total amount spent on charitable contributions. Line 12B, enter the total amount of investment interest expense. Line 12C, enter the expenditures according to Section 59E2. Line 12D, enter any other deductions not declared above. Credits. Line 13A, enter the total amount of low-income housing credit according to Section 42J5. Line 13B, enter any other low-income housing credit. Line 13C, enter the qualified rehabilitation expenditures for rental real estate. If applicable, attach Form 3, 4, 6, 8 to this form. Line 13D, enter any other real estate credits. Line 13E, enter any other rental credits. Line 13F, enter the amount of biofuel producer credit, and attach Form 6, 4, 7, 8 to this form. Line 13G, enter the amount of any other credits not declared above. International transactions. Line 14, attach the Schedule K2 form and check the box provided to indicate that you are reporting items of international tax relevance. Alternative minimum tax items. Line 15A, enter the post-1986 depreciation adjustment. Line 15B, enter the adjusted gain or loss. Line 15C, enter the amount of depletion, other than oil and gas. Line 15D, enter the gross income from oil, gas, and other geothermal properties. Line 15E, enter the deductions from oil, gas, and other geothermal properties. Line 15F, enter any other alternative minimum tax, AMT, items and attach the relevant statements. Items affecting shareholder basis. Line 16A, enter the amount of tax-exempt interest income. Line 16B, enter any other tax-exempt income. Line 16C, enter the total of any non-deductible expenses. Line 16D, enter the total of any distributions made and attach the relevant statements to this form. Line 16E, enter the amount of repayments made for loans from shareholders. Line 16F, enter the amount of foreign taxes paid for or accrued. Other information. Line 17A, enter the amount of investment income earned. Line 17B, enter the amount of investment expenses of the corporation. Line 17C, enter the amount of dividend distributions paid from accumulated earnings and profits. Line 17D, enter any other relevant items and amounts and attach the relevant statements to this form. Reconciliation. Line 18, add the amounts on the far right column from lines 1 through 10. From that sum, subtract the sum of the amounts on lines 11 through 12D and 16F and enter the difference. Schedule L. Balance sheets per books. This section has 4 columns split into 2 groups. Columns A and B under beginning of tax year, and columns C and D under end of tax year. Make sure to keep these in mind to avoid any confusion when entering information. All information that is entered here should correspond to the information on the records of the corporation. Line 1. Cash. Enter the cash balances at the beginning and end of the tax year. For the rest of the items in this section, make sure to enter the appropriate balances of the given items at the beginning and end of the tax year. Line 2A. Trade notes and accounts receivable. Enter the balances of trade notes and accounts receivable. Line 2B. Less allowance for bad debts. Enter the balances of the amount of allowance reduced to account for bad debts. Line 3. Inventories. Enter the balances of inventories. Line 4. U.S. government obligations. Enter the balances of any U.S. government obligations. Line 5. Tax-exempt securities. Enter the balances of tax-exempt securities. Line 6. Other current assets. Enter the balances of any other current assets and attach the relevant statements to this form. Line 7. Loans to shareholders. Enter the balances of any loans given to shareholders. Line 8. Mortgage and real estate loans. Enter the balances of any mortgage and real estate loans. Line 9. Other investments. Enter the balances of any other investments made and attach the relevant statements to this form. Line 10A. Buildings and other depreciable assets. Enter the balances of buildings and other depreciable assets. Line 10B. Less accumulated depreciation. Enter the balances of the amount of depreciation accumulated. Line 11A. Depletable assets. Enter the balances of any depletable assets. Line 11B. Less accumulated depletion. Enter the balances of the amount of depletion accumulated. Line 12. Land. Enter the balances of any land owned by the corporation, net of any amortization. Line 13A. Intangible assets. Enter the balances of any amortizable intangible assets owned. Line 13B. Less accumulated amortization. Enter the balances of the amount of amortization accumulated. Line 14. Other assets. Enter the balances of any other assets owned, and attach the relevant statements to this form. Line 15. Total assets. Enter the balances of the total of all assets owned. Line 16. Accounts payable. Enter the balances of accounts payable. Line 17. Mortgages, notes, and bonds payable in less than 1 year. Enter the balances of any mortgages, notes, and bonds payable in less than 1 year. Line 18. Other current liabilities. Enter the balances of any other current liabilities and attach the relevant statements to this form. Line 19. Loans from shareholders. Enter the balances of loans from shareholders. Line 20. Mortgages, notes, and bonds payable in 1 year or more. Enter the balances of any mortgages, notes, and bonds payable in 1 year or more. Line 21. Other liabilities. Enter the balances of any other liabilities and attach the relevant statements to this form. Line 22. Capital stock. Enter the balances of capital stock. Line 23. Additional paid in capital. Enter the balances of any additional paid in capital. Line 24. Retained earnings. Enter the balances of retained earnings. Line 25. Adjustments to shareholders' equity. Enter the balances of the adjustments to shareholders' equity and attach the relevant statements to this form. Line 26. Less cost of treasury stock. Enter the balances of the cost of treasury stock. Line 27. Total liabilities and shareholders' equity. Enter the total balances of liabilities and shareholders' equity. Schedule M1. Reconciliation of income, loss, per books with income, loss, per return. Line 1. Enter the amount of net income or loss. Line 2. Enter the income included on Schedule K, lines 1, 2, 3C, 4, 5A, 6, 7, 8A, 9, and 10 that has not been recorded in the books this year. Make sure to itemize them. Line 3. Enter the expenses recorded this year that are not included in Schedule K, lines 1 through 12 and 16F. Make sure to itemize them. Line 3A. Enter the amount of depreciation. Line 3B. Enter the amount of expenses on travel and entertainment. Line 4. Add lines 1 through 3 and enter the sum. Line 5. Enter the income recorded on books this year that was not included on Schedule K, lines 1 through 10. Make sure to itemize them. Line 5A. Enter the amount of tax-exempt interest. Line 6. Enter the amount of deductions not included on Schedule K, lines 1 through 12 and 16F, that were not charged against book income for this tax year. Make sure to itemize them. Line 6A. Enter the amount of depreciation. Line 7. Add lines 5 and 6 and enter the sum. Line 8. Subtract line 7 from line 4 and enter the difference. Schedule M2. Analysis of accumulated adjustments account, shareholders' undistributed taxable income previously taxed, accumulated earnings and profits, and other adjustments account. Enter the balances or amounts for each item in this section for each of the columns relevant to that item. The columns are as follows. Column A, accumulated adjustments account. Column B, shareholders' undistributed taxable income previously taxed. Column C, accumulated earnings and profits. Column D, other adjustments account. Make sure to enter the correct information in each column. Line 1. Enter the balance of each column at the beginning of the tax year. Line 2. Enter the ordinary income from page 1, line 21 of this form in column A. Line 3. Enter any other additions to column A and column D. Line 4. Enter the loss from page 1, line 21 of this form in column A, if applicable. Line 5. Enter any other reductions to column A and column D. Line 6. Add lines 1 through 5 and enter the sum in each respective column. Line 7. Enter the distributions in each column. Line 8. Subtract line 7 from line 6 and enter the difference in each column. Review and double-check if all entered information is correct and accurate. Once finished, click on the Done button to save, download, and print Form 1120S. To learn more about this form or find other fillable templates, visit www.pdfrun.com.